You didn't expect it to feel like this. You thought getting older would bring relief, less pressure, fewer responsibilities, more space to just be. But instead, it crept in quietly. The heaviness, not in your body alone, but in your mornings, in the stillness between conversations, in the way you now pause before answering the phone, because you're not sure if you have the energy. You're not in pain, but you don't feel whole either. You've made peace with the past. So why does the present still feel heavy? They tell you aging is natural, that you should be grateful for every year. And yes, you are, but no one talks about this weight, this quiet sorrow, this strange feeling that the world has kept turning, and you're still here, but not quite part of it. You smile through it, you get dressed, you take your vitamins, but inside something aches. And here's the truth no one says out loud. Aging isn't just about the body changing. It's about everything you thought you were beginning to fade. The roles, the pace, the sense of importance. It's not just loss. It's a letting go you didn't ask for, but one that's happening anyway. But what if this heaviness is not a punishment? What if it's an invitation to stop chasing, to stop proving, to finally sit with the self that's been waiting beneath all the noise? This isn't the end. It's the beginning of something raw, real, and maybe even beautiful. In this video, we're not going to talk about how to fight aging. We're going to talk about what it means to wake up through it. Through 7 Buddhist truths, you'll see how the heaviness you feel might actually be the first sign that something sacred is arriving. And if you've ever sat quietly and wondered, is it too late for me to feel light again? Then stay, because it's not. Subscribe to Lotus Light Teachings if you're ready to walk the second half of life not in fear, but in freedom. Let's begin. Truth 1. Aging slows you down so you can wake up. Started small. You forgot why you walked into the kitchen. You bent down to pick up something and stayed there for a few seconds longer than you used to. You missed a step. You took longer to respond to a simple message. And suddenly, the world felt a few seconds too fast. Or maybe you had become a few seconds too slow. At first, you resisted it. You tried to speed up, tried to keep up, tried to pretend your pace hadn't changed. But it had. And the more you pushed, the more tired you felt. Not just physically, but in your soul. No one tells you that one of the first signs of transformation is this slowness. There's a man named Kazuo. He's 72. He used to run a company, meetings, deadlines, travel. Now, he takes 20 minutes just to prepare a cup of tea. He told me something I'll never forget. I used to drink tea while reading emails. Now I drink tea just to feel the warmth in my hands. That's the only task. He didn't become less. He became more present. In Buddhism, we don't see slowness as a sign of decline. We see it as the first sign of awakening. Because when you're young, you move too fast to notice the breath. You skip over the moments that are whispering to you. You miss the softness in someone's eyes. You miss the way your own hands rest on your lap. But when life slows you down, not by choice, but by age, it's not stopping you. It's showing you what's real. You're not meant to move the same way forever. You're meant to evolve. Aging is your body asking you to arrive, to stop rushing from moment to moment, and finally live inside one. There's a quiet magic in walking slower, in watching the sunlight shift across the floor, in hearing the breath come in, not as something automatic, but as a miracle that just keeps happening. The slowness you fear, it might be the first time life is actually inviting you to be here. So next time you feel behind, don't rush to catch up. Just pause, put your hand over your heart, and ask, what is this moment trying to show me? That speed has always hidden? Maybe you're not falling behind. Maybe you're finally walking at the pace of your soul. Have you felt that too? That strange tension between wanting to move faster and needing to rest? You can share it in the comments. Because sometimes one story gives another person permission to slow down too. Up next, truth 2, your body isn't failing. It's returning to you. Some mornings, it takes a little longer to get out of bed. You sit at the edge for a few seconds, maybe a minute, just waiting for your body to agree. The joints feel stiff. The breath feels shallow. The bones, the same bones that carried children, built homes, survived heartbreak, now feel unsure. You close your eyes and silently think, is this the beginning of the end? But what if it isn't? What if this body isn't giving up? Is giving you back something you've ignored for too long? There's a woman named Helen. She's 69. She used to be the strong one, carried the groceries, ran the errands, never asked for help. And now, she walks slowly. She forgets words. She needs more time. But something strange has happened. She smiles more. She told me, for the first time in my life, I'm actually listening to my body, not bossing it around. In Buddhist teachings, the body is not something we own. It's something we borrow. It's not a machine to be optimized. It's a teacher, temple, and aging is the body's way of whispering, come back. You've been so far away, in the past, in the future, in your expectations. Come back. Be here. Be inside me again. You see, when you're young, you treat the body like a servant. Push it. Ignore it. Demand from it. But when you age, the body becomes a gatekeeper. You can't rush. You can't numb. You have to listen. And that listening, that's where healing begins. There's an old Zen saying, when the body aches, the soul knocks, not because something is wrong, but because something wants to be seen. The ache in your back might be the first time you've ever really felt your spine. The shortness of breath might be the first time you've honored every inhale. The slowing of digestion, the trembling hands, the weaker legs, they aren't failures, they're invitations. So next time your body says, not now, don't fight it, don't resent it, don't fear it. Place your hand on the place that hurts. Close your eyes and say gently, I'm listening now. I'm here. I'm sorry it took me so long. Is there a part of your body you've spent years resenting that now just needs to be held with kindness? Share it if you like. You'd be surprised how many others are quietly carrying the same ache. Up next, Truth 3, the mind is the heaviest thing you carry. You sit down at the table. There's no noise, no tasks waiting. The bills are paid. The phone is quiet, but your mind, still racing, still remembering things you forgot you were carrying. The argument from 10 years ago, the moment you stayed silent when you should have spoken, the child who doesn't call as much, the version of you that used to be so confident. No one tells you this. As the body slows down, the mind gets louder. When you were younger, there was always something to do. Work, appointments, people to take care of. You didn't have time to think about what you lost or what never came true. But now, you have time. Too much, maybe. And silence can be deceiving because it doesn't always bring peace. Sometimes, it brings everything back. There's a man named Walter. He's 75, retired, living alone in a small house near the woods. One day he told me, the hardest part isn't the loneliness. It's the conversations I still have in my head with people who aren't even here anymore. In Buddhism, we say the mind is like a monkey, always jumping, always reaching, always avoiding the still branch that leads home. But here's the truth. You don't have to tame the mind. You just have to recognize it. To say, I see you, I hear you, but I don't have to believe everything you say. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who watches them come and go, like clouds across a sky that's always been clear underneath. Some days, the heaviest thing in your body is your memory. Not the joints, not the breath, but the regret you keep replaying. You ask yourself, why did I say that? Why didn't I go? Why didn't I take better care of myself? But regret is a loop with no exit until you step off the track completely. Not by erasing the past, but by meeting it with compassion. Try this. Next time a painful thought shows up, don't argue with it. Don't believe it right away. Just breathe and say, that was one version of me. I forgive that version. Because holding on to regret doesn't change the past. It only weighs down the present. So if your mind feels heavy, it's not because you're broken. It's because you've lived, you've loved, you've lost, You've carried more than most will ever know. And now, you have the chance to lay it down. Gently, patiently, breath by breath. Herb, is there a memory you're ready to stop punishing yourself for? If it feels right, share it. Someone might be carrying the same memory, thinking they're alone in it. Up next, truth for grief isn't the end. It's the beginning of softness. Sometimes, it shows up without warning. You're folding laundry, and a song plays in the background, a song you haven't heard in years. And suddenly, you're crying in the hallway. No one died today. No bad news arrived. But somehow, your chest aches like something just left. That's grief. And the older you get, the more familiar it becomes. Not just for people, but for versions of yourself you'll never be again. No one prepared you for how often you'd grieve, not just once, but in small, quiet waves. You grieve the parent who's no longer here. You grieve the child who's grown up and moved on. You grieve the energy you used to have, the confidence you once wore like a second skin. And then one day you realize you've been saying goodbye to something or someone for most of your life. There's a woman named Eileen. She lost her husband 5 years ago, but she told me the hardest part wasn't the funeral. It was the Wednesday mornings, the empty chair at breakfast, the way she still catches herself setting 2 cups of tea. And yet, she said something beautiful. I'm softer now. My grief didn't harden me. It broke me open. In Buddhist teachings, grief is not a failure. It's a form of love with nowhere to go. And sometimes, it becomes the doorway to compassion. You begin to look at strangers differently. You listen more. You speak slower, because you know what it's like to walk through the world carrying something invisible. So if you feel fragile lately, if you cry at commercials, if you stare at old photos longer than you mean to, it's okay. You're not falling apart. You're softening. And that softness is strength. Because what grief leaves behind is a heart that no longer needs to pretend. You stop needing to be the strong one. You stop chasing perfection. You start holding things more gently, including yourself. Try this. Light a candle tonight, not for mourning, but for remembering, for honoring all the goodbyes you never fully said. And then whisper to yourself, it's okay. It's okay to still miss them. It's okay to miss who I used to be. But I'm still here. And that's enough. Herb, what's something or someone you're still learning how to say goodbye to? Your words might be the comfort someone else needs tonight. Up next, truth 5. Peace isn't found in stillness. It's found in permission. You thought peace would arrive quietly, like a soft blanket, like a meditation bell, like silence that finally silences everything else. But it didn't. You created space. You cleaned the house. You turned off the noise. You sat still. And yet, your chest still felt tight. Your thoughts still ran ahead of you. Your body sat, but your mind refused. So you asked, where's the peace? Why can't I feel calm, even when everything is finally quiet? Here's the hard truth, and the tender one. Peace doesn't come from silence. Peace comes from permission. Permission to feel, to rest, to stop performing. And for many of us, we've never really given ourselves that. There's a man named Daniel, 68, who spent his whole life being the strong one, the one who didn't cry at funerals, the one who never took sick days, the one who smiled and said, I'm fine, even when he wasn't. After retirement, he finally had time to slow down. He imagined peace would arrive like a wave, but instead what arrived was nothing. He told me, I thought I'd feel peace when I had less to do, but now that the noise is gone, I feel exposed. That's the thing no one tells you. When the noise is gone, the self remains. And if you've spent your life avoiding what's inside, stillness can feel like a mirror you're not ready to look into. In Buddhist teachings, stillness isn't peace by itself. Stillness is the ground. But peace is the seed, and it only grows when there's warmth. And that warmth is permission. Permission to rest without guilt. Permission to not be useful. Permission to feel joy, even after grief. Permission to not know what comes next. Permission to stop fixing yourself and start loving what's already here. Many of us have lived decades with rules that were never ours. I should be more productive. I shouldn't be tired. I need to stay strong for everyone else. And these rules become cages. Beautiful, polished cages. But the truth is, there is no freedom without permission. And there is no peace without freedom. Take a moment now. Let this be the practice. Breathe in. Feel the weight on your shoulders. And say out loud if you can, I don't have to hold it all anymore. Breathe out and whisper, I give myself permission to be exactly as I am. There's a woman named Rosa, 73. She used to measure her worth by how much she could help others. One day she told me, I spent 40 years making sure everyone else felt seen. But I never once asked myself, what would make me feel at home in my own skin? Since then, she lights a candle each morning and simply sits with her hands over her heart. She doesn't ask for anything. She doesn't try to achieve anything. She just whispers, you don't have to be more than this. And in that space, peace arrives. Not like thunder, not like lightning, but like dew, quiet, gentle, enough. So if peace has felt far away lately, if your quiet still feels restless, if you're doing everything right and still feel unsettled, don't ask yourself what's missing. Ask yourself what you haven't given yourself permission to feel. Maybe you're still trying to deserve rest. Maybe you're still performing strength when what you need is softness. Maybe you're still punishing yourself for something that ended 20 years ago. Peace will not come by doing more. It will come when you step off the stage and realize that there is nothing left to prove. Not to anyone, not even to yourself. Try this. Before bed tonight, place both hands over your heart. Feel the rise and fall of your breath, and gently say, I forgive myself for all the ways I've demanded perfection. I give myself permission to heal. That's where peace lives. Not in silence, but in surrender. What's one permission you've been waiting your whole life to give yourself? You're welcome to speak it below. Sometimes just writing it out loud is a revolution. Up next, Truth 6. Letting go isn't about loss. It's about lightness. You think letting go means losing something important, something you can't replace. You think it means forgetting, or giving up, or walking away from what once mattered most. But what if that's not true? What if letting go isn't about what you're losing, but about what you're finally making space to carry? What if letting go is not the end of anything, but the first breath of real lightness? There's a woman named Claire. She's 76. Her closet still holds her husband's jackets, 12 years after he passed. She doesn't cry anymore when she walks past them, but she doesn't wear them, doesn't touch them, just keeps them there, frozen in time. One afternoon, she sat with me, her fingers resting on one of the sleeves. She whispered, I thought if I gave them away, I'd forget him, but now I wonder if I've just been holding onto the weight of what's already in my heart. A few weeks later, she packed up most of the jackets, donated them, kept one, and then she laughed, a laugh that sounded like it had been trapped under a boulder. She said, it didn't make me forget him. It made room for me to remember him without the ache. We all carry things like that, not just objects, but roles, fears, versions of ourselves we've outgrown but haven't had the courage to release. The person we used to be when we were admired, when we were strong, when we were needed. But holding on to who you were means always reaching backward and never fully arriving in the life you have now. In Buddhist wisdom, the word non-attachment often gets misunderstood. It doesn't mean detachment. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you stop clinging. You stop grasping. You stop suffocating the present by trying to keep the past alive. It means you hold life with open palms. So when it's time to let go, what falls, falls gently, and what stays, stays freely. Letting go is not a one-time act. It's a rhythm, like breathing. You inhale, you receive, you exhale, you release. If you only inhale, you suffocate. If you never let go, you grow heavy. Aging, in many ways, is a season of exhaling, of loosening, of no longer needing to carry every version of yourself, every story, every expectation, into this new chapter. There's a retired teacher named Luis. He spent 35 years shaping young minds, his identity wrapped tightly around being the one with answers. After retiring, he felt invisible, useless, like he no longer mattered. But then one day, he started volunteering at a community garden. He watered plants, swept pathways, sat in the shade with people who just needed to be listened to. And slowly, he began to realize, maybe I don't need to be important anymore. Maybe I just need to be present. He let go of status and gained connection. He let go of who he thought he was and met who he actually is, peaceful, grounded, enough. So here's a gentle practice. Look around your life, not with judgment, but with tenderness. Ask yourself, what am I still holding on to that no longer holds me back? What weight am I calling love when it's really fear of change? And then breathe. Breathe out what is no longer yours to carry. The roles, the guilt, the need to be who you were 10 years ago, the silence between you and someone who may never speak first. Let it be okay. Let it be done. You don't have to burn bridges. You don't have to forget anyone. You just have to stop tying your sense of self to everything that's slipping through your fingers anyway. Because what letting go gives you is space to stretch, to grow, to rest, to move through the world not in defense, but in softness. And with that softness comes freedom, not the freedom to be someone else, but the freedom to finally be yourself, without apology, without armor, without weight. What's something you're ready to stop carrying? Not because it doesn't matter, but because you finally matter enough to set it down? Say it below if it feels safe. You may not be the only one holding it, but you might be the first one brave enough to release it. Up next, Truth 7: Aging isn't about time running out. It's about time opening inward. You check the clock more often now, not out of urgency, but because somewhere deep down, you feel it ticking differently. The birthdays come faster. The holidays feel closer together. And people, the ones you thought would always be around, start becoming memories more than conversations. You look at the mirror and think, where did it all go? Time, once so abundant, now feels like sand slipping through your hands. But what if we've misunderstood time all along? What if aging isn't about the years we have left, but about the depth we've never entered? What if the truth isn't that time is running out, but that for the first time in your life, time is asking you to go inward, to stop measuring moments in days or decades, and start feeling them in breaths, in pauses, in presence. There's a man named Hiroshi, 81. He lives alone in a small home overlooking a river. Each morning, he walks to the same bench with a thermos of tea. He sits for an hour. No phone, no book, just watching the light change on the water. When asked if he ever feels lonely, he said, I used to be afraid of being alone, but now I finally hear things that were always there. The birds, my heartbeat, the quiet part of me I ignored for 70 years. In Buddhist thought, impermanence isn't something to mourn, it's something to honor, because it reminds us we don't own time. We live inside it like breath inside lungs. And the older we get, the more we're invited to stop racing through it and begin listening within it. You may not run like you used to. You may not multitask, impress, dazzle like before. But now you feel things. You notice the way light lands on your hand in the afternoon. You hear the tremble in someone's voice before they cry. You know when silence says more than words. This is time opening inward, and it is sacred. There's a kind of wisdom that doesn't arrive until everything else is stripped away. Not the knowledge from books, not the clever advice, but the wisdom of being. I am here. I have nothing to prove, and everything I need is already inside me. And maybe, just maybe, this is what time has been trying to teach you all along. That your worth isn't in what you do, or how long you do it. Your worth is in your being, in your breath, in your gentle attention to this one and only moment. Try this tonight when the world quiets down. Before sleep, before the thoughts return. place your hand on your chest, feel your heartbeat, and say, I'm still here. And that is a miracle. Let time stop being something to chase. Let it become something to hold. Softly, tenderly, fully. Aging is not a countdown. It's an unfolding, a deepening, a blooming that happens inward, away from the noise, away from the spotlight, but closer than ever to truth. And maybe that's the real secret, that in the last chapters of your life, you finally become most alive, not loud, not celebrated, but aware, awake, alive in the way only someone who's lost and loved and let go can be. What is time teaching you now that youth never could? If you feel ready, share it below. You might just find someone who's hearing the same whisper in their own chest. And if this journey, these truths, brought you even a moment of lightness, even a single breath of clarity, subscribe to Lotus Light Teachings, because this path is better walked together. And wherever you are in your life, you're not behind, you're not late, you're exactly on time. Just breathe, and let's keep going.